When my father used to come home from work, we used to live in Detroit, so it was a basement because he was a contractor, so he had a lot of dirt and stuff in his shoes. So he'd come into the middle and he'd go downstairs to take a shower because he had the basement all fixed up. And then my mother would be at the front, at the top of the stairs, and me and my brother both standing there, and she had the report card for the day. So my brother and I always had exit strategy. Run to the front door, you go left, I go right, okay? And whoever took the lucky one is gonna get away. But you'll get it later when Don's tired, because he had that belt hanging in the back room, man. We used to just sharpen up the thing over there. Oh, man, I'll tell you what, those were the days.
My dad was only 5'5".
Yeah,
My mother was 5 feet.
yeah, tough.
And so it would be, I mean, if you did something wrong at the dinner table, all of a sudden your shins were bleeding. It's just, you never hit you.
She used to throw the
above
shoe.
here, no,
My
just a
mo-
foot, right?
My mother used to say she didn't like somebody who was ignorant,
Yeah,
you know? To me, it was always yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, I mean, everything, even today. At my age, I go to the bank, the girl's 25 years old. I'm doing my business with the money, and I say, yes, ma'am. She looks at me, says,
yeah.
well, that's how I grew up, you know, but
That's
it's not
respect.
that way anymore.
Yeah.
It's
No,
just different. And, you know, it just, we were all respectful, especially
Well, you had
elders.
it.
Yeah,
Mr. and
exactly.
Mrs., Mr. and Mrs.
Exactly.
Never
You know,
first name people.
my-
Sir,
yeah.
sir, ma'am.
My father,
Sonny, just join in anytime.
Yeah.
no, listen, you're doing good, Sonny.
Al Capone was born January 17, 1899. Capone's parents immigrated to the United States from Naples in 1893. Al, the fourth of 9 children, grew up in Brooklyn, New York. He attended school until the 6th grade, when he dropped out at age 14 after striking a teacher. He worked a variety of odd jobs as a candy store clerk, a bowling alley pinboy, a laborer in an ammunition plant, and a cutter in a bookbindery, all the while serving the South Brooklyn Rippers and 40 Thieves Juniors, 2 kid gangs, that is, bands of delinquent children known for vandalism and petty crime that were common in New York at the time. Capone became a member of the James Street Boys gang during this period, run by Johnny Torrio, the man that would become his lifelong mentor and associated with the 5 Points gang. At age 16, Capone became a member of the 5 Points gang and served aspiring mobster Francisco Aioli. Before Capone turned 21, he was involved in several violent incidents. In a youthful scrape at the Harvard Inn, a young hoodlum named Frank Galluccio slashed Capone with a knife or razor across his left cheek after Capone made a crude comment to Galluccio's sister, prompting the later name Scarface. In another incident, Capone brutally assaulted a low-level member of the rival White Hands gang and left him for dead. Since White Hand gang leaders promised retribution, Capone, his wife, and his young child left for Chicago to work for Torrio. Torrio had moved from New York to Chicago in 1909 to help run the giant brothel business under Chicago crime boss Big Jim Colosimo. Shortly after Capone's arrival in the city in 1919, Colosimo was assassinated by either Yale or Capone himself in 1920 to make way for Torrio's rule. As Prohibition began, new bootlegging operations opened up and drew in immense wealth. In 1924, Capone was responsible for the murder of Joe Howard in retribution for Howard's earlier assault of one of Capone's friends. After a stint in prison, his friend Torrio retired to Italy, and Capone became crime czar of Chicago, running gambling, prostitution, and bootlegging rackets, and expanding his territories by gunning down rivals and rival gangs. His wealth in 1927 was estimated at close to $100 million. Capone was notoriously known for the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. 7 members of Bugsy Moran's gang were machine-gunned in a garage on Chicago's North Side on February 14, 1929. That same year, Capone was convicted of possessing a concealed handgun and served 10 months in Philadelphia's Holmesburg prison. Who was John Gotti? John Gotti was born October 27, 1940, in the South Bronx, New York, to Italian immigrants Fanny and Joseph Gotti. The Gotti family, with 13 brothers and sisters, settled in East New York, an area known at the time for its gang activity. By the age of 12, Gotti was working as an errand boy for an underground club in the neighborhood run by Carmine Fatico, a captain in the Gambino family, the largest of 5 organized crime families in New York City. Gotti soon became the leader of a gang called the Fulton Rockaway Boys, a group known for their frequent robberies and carjackings. He was considered a bully and constant discipline problem at Franklin K. Lane High School until he dropped out at 16. By 18, the police department ranked Gotti as a low-level associate in the Gambino crime family. Between 1957 and 1961, Gotti pursued a life of crime on a full-time basis. Gotti's arrest record included street fighting, public intoxication, and car theft. By his 21st birthday, Gotti had been arrested 5 times but served little jail time. John Gotti would face run-ins with the law several times, including a 4-year prison term for manslaughter, before becoming head of the Gambino crime family. Gotti quickly became a major player in the Gambino hijacking crew. In 1968, Gotti served his first major sentence when the FBI charged him with committing cargo thefts near John F. Kennedy Airport. Gotti was convicted and sentenced to 3 years in prison. After his release from prison in 1971, Gotti continued his life of crime. In 1985, the FBI had gathered enough evidence to place Gotti and his partner Della Croce under federal indictments for racketeering and heroin trafficking charges. The drug charges infuriated Castellano, who punished illegal drug trafficking with a penalty of death. To soothe over the situation with Castellano, Gotti asked Della Croce to speak to the boss on his behalf. But before an understanding could be reached, Della Croce died of cancer. All goodwill between Castellano and Gotti dissolved when the boss didn't attend Della Croce's funeral. Gotti saw the behavior as disrespectful, and according to later testimony, he decided to take action. 2 weeks later, on December 16, 1985, Castellano was gunned down outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan. Gotti was made boss soon afterwards. By August 1986, Gotti had become something of a local hero and an icon in his Howard Beach neighborhood. When it came time to face trial for the racketeering charges, Gotti and the other defendants were acquitted of their crimes. FBI officials later discovered that the jury foreman fixed the verdict. It was a crushing defeat for law enforcement officials, and Gotti became the mob's symbol of invincibility, earning the name Teflon Don because charges against him just wouldn't stick. While Gotti acted as boss, the Gambino family made more than $500 million in revenue from illegal activities such as gambling, drug trafficking, extortion, and stock fraud. As a repeat offender, Gotti was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and sent to federal prison in Marion, Illinois. Gotti later died in jail the summer of 2002 in Federal Prison Hospital from complications with head and neck cancer. Paul Castellano was born in Bentonhurst, Brooklyn, New York, on June 26, 1915. His parents, Giuseppe and Concetta Castellano, were both Italian immigrants. His father was a butcher and an early member of the Mangano crime family, the forerunner of the Gambino crime family. Castellano dropped out of school in the 8th grade to learn butchering and collecting numbers games receipts, both from his father in July 1934. 19-year-old Castellano was arrested for the first time in Harvard, Connecticut, for robbing a haberdasher. In 1957, after Anastasia's murder and Gambino's elevation to boss, Castellano attended the abortive Appalachian meeting in Appalachian, New York. When New York State Police raided the meeting, Castellano was one of 61 high-ranking mobsters that were arrested. Refusing to answer grand jury questions about the meeting, Castellano spent a year in prison in contempt charges. On January 13, 1960, Castellano was sentenced to 5 years in prison for conspiracy to withhold information. However, in November 1960, Castellano's conviction was reversed on appeal. Castellano identified more as a businessman than a criminal, taking over non-legitimate businesses and converting them to legitimate enterprises. In his early years, Castellano used his butcher's training to launch Dial Poultry, a poultry distribution business that once supplied 300 butchers in New York City. Castellano used intimidation tactics to force his customers, which included supermarket chains, Key Food, and Walbaum's, to buy Dial's products. As Castellano became more powerful in the Gambino family, he started to make large amounts of money from concrete in the construction industry. His son Philip was president of Scaramix Concrete Corporation, which exercised a near monopoly on the concrete supply in Staten Island. Castellano handled Gambino interests in the Concrete Club, a club of contractors selected by the Commission, the mob's ruling body, to handle contracts between $2 million and $15 million. In return, the contractors gave a 2% kickback of the contract value to the Commission. On October 15, 1976, Gambino died at his home of natural causes. Against expectations, he appointed Castellano to succeed him over his underboss. Della Croce, at the time, was imprisoned for tax evasion and was unable to contest Castellano's succession. Castellano arranged for Della Croce to remain as underboss while directly running traditional mob activities such as extortion, robbery, and loan sharking. While Della Croce accepted Castellano's succession, the deal effectively split the Gambino family into two rival factions. In September 1980, Castellano allegedly ordered the murder of his former son-in-law, Frank Amato, for physically abusing his wife, Castellano's daughter, Connie. According to FBI documents, DeMeo murdered Amato, cut up his body, and disposed of the remains at sea. On Monday, December 16, 1985, Bellotti drove Castellano to the prearranged early evening meeting at Sparks Steakhouse. A hit team consisting of Salvatore Scala, Edward Lino, and John Carneglia waited near the restaurant entrance. Positioned down the streets were backup shooters Ruggiero, Dominic Pizzonia, and Tony Rampino. Gotti and Gravano observed the scene from a car across the street. As Castellano was exiting the car at the front of the restaurant at around 5:26 p.m., the gunman ran up and shot him several times. Allegedly, Carneglia delivered the fatal shot to Castellano's head. Bellotti was shot as he exited the front driver's door. Before leaving the murder scene, Gotti drove over to view the bodies. Castellano was buried in the Moravian Cemetery in New York. Who was Eliot Ness? Eliot Ness joined the Bureau of Prohibition in 1927, assembling a team of Prohibition enforcement personnel known as the Untouchables, to combat the activities of gangster Al Capone. Ness stands as the man most often recognized for destroying the multi-million-dollar brewery's operation by Al Capone. Ness was responsible, in part, for Capone's arrest and conviction of tax evasion. He was instrumental in ceasing the power Capone had over the city of Chicago. He moved on to the Chicago branch of the U.S. Treasury Department in 1927, where he became an agent. Ness was transferred to the Justice Department in 1928 to work with a prohibition. Ness had to choose no more than 12 men to form this special squad. Ness's plan was to injure Capone where it hurt the most: his wallet. If the squad could severely damage the mobster's source of income, Capone would lose the power to buy protection and services. Ness was assigned to destroy the breweries affiliated with Capone and gather evidence associating Capone and his followers with breaking federal laws. Ness's goal was to have a major impact on the gangster's approximate annual salary of $75 million. By October 1929, Ness had selected 9 agents to carry out these awesome tasks. This special unit began locating and shutting down breweries in the Chicago area affiliated with Capone. Through surveillance, anonymous tips, and wiretapping, they were able to discover many of the money-making businesses in which Capone was involved. Within the first 6 months of operation, Ness and his crew seized 19 distilleries and 6 major breweries, denting Capone's wallet by approximately $1 million. One of Capone's men paid Ness a visit in Chicago's Transportation Building. He offered to pay Ness $2,000 to stop ruining Capone's businesses and promised an additional $2,000 each week following if he continued to cooperate. Outraged, Ness ordered the man out and immediately called the press into his office. That day in 1930, Ness announced that neither he nor any of his men could be bought by Capone, and their mission was unstoppable. The next day, a Chicago Tribune reporter referred to the special squad as the Untouchables, a name that eventually became the title of a 1960s TV crime drama about Ness, as well as a popular 1987 feature film that starred Kevin Costner. The press was an ally. Ness made a habit of calling the media for each raid his crew made on Capone's breweries. Although critics argued that such publicity would harm the squad's efforts, Ness proved them wrong because they could operate under the Untouchables without recognition. Capone had the squad's phones tapped, and the pressure was mounting. For some time, the squad was unsuccessful in their mission. One raid, however, did prove successful, forcing Capone to lose more than $200,000 on one brewery. Capone's rage intensified, caused a friend of Ness's to be brutally murdered. In response, Ness made a personal phone call to Capone, telling him to look out his window at 11 o'clock. Ness paraded all of Capone's vehicles seized from their raids. They were on their way to be auctioned off. Following this, 3 murder attempts were made on Elliot Ness. Ness and his men discovered a large brewery on the top 2 floors of an office building after receiving an anonymous tip from a woman. The unit halted operations at the location, costing Capone an estimated $1 million. After a long and successful career in Chicago and Cleveland, perhaps Ness's greatest challenge came when his reputation as an irreproachable investigator was questioned.
When my father used to come home from work, we used to live in Detroit, so it was a basement because he was a contractor, so he had a lot of dirt and stuff in his shoes. So he'd come into the middle and he'd go downstairs to take a shower because he had the basement all fixed up. And then my mother would be at the front, at the top of the stairs with me and my brother both standing there, and she had the report card for the day.
Oh, shiny.
So my brother and I always had exit strategy. Run to the front door, you go left, I go right, okay? And whoever took the lucky one is gonna get away. Well, you'll get it later when Don's tired, because he had that belt hanging in the back room, man. We used to sharpen up the thing over there. Oh, man, I'll tell you what, those were the days.
I mean, Marlon Brando was an extraordinary person to work with, but it was magical. It wasn't, you didn't talk acting stuff with him. He'd come in and go, and that meant, where's the shot? And I would work with him through props. I would put little salami out, or I would take a cat and just put, but not words. I would never talk about acting stuff. He would hate it if I talked about, kind of acting talk. But I always worked with props and, kind of offered him things that might help him. But he was a man of incredible intelligence.
Welcome to OVS YouTube page, where we specialize in some of the most vintage videotapes out there. We are currently working on a very massive project for the Los Angeles and Chicago area. These vintage videos are news, broadcast, television shows, anything imagined. Most television stations dumped this footage years ago. Here at Obsolete Video Transfer Services, we were lucky enough to work on a massive archive. Maybe you have something similar to this. Maybe you have tapes laying around. Maybe you'd like us to transfer these off similar to what you're seeing. We're not just a videotape transfer house. Oh no, we also repair your vintage video gear. People bring me video gear from all over the country. Betacam SP, 3/4 Urmatic, even Betacam SP video cameras where they have damaged them because they don't take cassettes. We fix everything. You might have a Betacam SP deck, camera, maybe you have a Betacam SP video loader, anything that's got to do with broadcast or the broadcast industry of the day, I can fix. Most people don't realize you may have a video deck and it's been sitting for years, but it doesn't exactly mean it's going to keep working. If it's been 20 years or more, you can pretty much guarantee the deck is going to have problems. So here at Obsolete Video Services, we will repair the deck for you. We have been here for the past 25 to 30 years. We specialize in all your obsolete videotape transfers from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond. You may be a producer, you may be a director, you may work at a television station, you even may be making a movie or a documentary. You may have vintage video formats sitting around with footage that you need done and transferred now. The main goal here, people, is to preserve the video footage and where it comes from. Many of these TV stations here in the Los Angeles market and elsewhere, most television programs are long gone. If your family member was lucky enough to capture these on some videotapes, it is great and possible in this day and age to bring that back to life. So here at Obsolete Video Transfer Services, we're doing just that. Thank you for watching OVS's YouTube channel. Hope you're enjoying all the clips. Please leave your comments and questions below at the bottom. We'd like to hear from you, the television industry. If you have videotapes and you worked as a producer, television engineer, maybe you were a cameraman, Maybe you have stories about your television channel. Maybe you're reliving some of the history of your channel right here on my YouTube page. Maybe you have specific funny little things about certain clips that we're posting. We want to hear all the information about the clips you are viewing. Obsolete Video Services is here for history as well as historical value. We value the people we work with, we value the video footage we recover, and we love saving video history. So why us? That's the main reason. We value the history that we are preserving here at Obsolete Video Services.
It was December 8, 1963, and by the time I arrived in Reno, it was 12 hours after I got the call. This was not going to be an average day at the office. He's been kidnapped from his hotel room at the Harris Club in South Lake Tahoe. As Frank Sinatra's publicist, I had to swing into action. It turned out 19-year-old Frank Jr. was sitting in his underwear eating a chicken dinner before a show when men masquerading as room service waiters broke into his hotel room and took him.
In a moment, in the wink of an eye, in a moment, as the world passes by, you can see a smile as it breaks, and the magic that it makes. In a moment, just a casual glance changes slowly to the maddest romance, a new life, a new attitude, in a moment's interlude. In a matter of no time at all, you can win with your back to the wall. With a car to the river, your aces, home run on the bases. In a moment, though you're desperate and down, in a moment, it can all turn around. It's a fact I've known to be true from the moment I saw